That's all right. We made it. We made it. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai from AARP. Apologies for the technical difficulties. I'm zooming in from Washington, D.C., and really excited about this conversation. I know we have a number of people that have joined and are joining. And so should we get started, or do you all want to wait another moment?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, welcome to the session on ageism in entrepreneurship. I think we have a pretty dynamic panel of folks joining us here. You've heard from Chip and Jeff and Betty, and I'm really looking forward to the perspective that they will share as entrepreneurs. As folks that embrace aging and all that it entails. And what we're really hoping that folks get out of the session today are insights that, help to inspire and maybe even inform your entrepreneurship, during this time. And so, I want to start with Chip. We had a chance to talk a little bit during the prep call about your journey, an extraordinary journey you've had as an entrepreneur over the years, working with some pretty, organizations that have become household brand names. And so can you share a little bit about your startup and the journey that you've had?
Sure. So my career as an entrepreneur can be summed up in 3 chapters. At age 26, I started a boutique hotel company called Joie de Vivre. Ran it for 24 years, created 52 boutique hotels around California, then sold it. And to quote Robert De Niro from the movie The Intern, he said, "Musicians don't retire, they quit when there's no more music left inside of them." I knew I had music inside of me, didn't know who I was going to share it with. And that's when I got a call 9 years ago from the 3 young founders of Airbnb to be their modern elder, which was not exactly at age 52 what I wanted to be, but the average age in the company was 26. And so being a modern elder was what I was. And I did that 4 years full-time. I still, 9 years into it, am a mentor to Brian Chesky, the CEO. He was also my boss. My boss was my mentee, and he was 21 years younger than me. That was complicated. And then finally, more recently, 4 years ago, based upon my experience at Airbnb, I wrote a book called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder, which led to creating the Modern Elder Academy, the world's first midlife wisdom school. And I'm here at the campus right now in Baja California Sur in Mexico.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's a lot of great places in California. California's a recurring theme here.
Well, California's a recurring theme, except for I'm in Mexico now. It's Baja California Sur, which is in Mexico. Okay. And interestingly, our second campus is in New Mexico. So I got California twice, San Francisco with Joie de Vivre and Airbnb. MEA is in Mexico, Old Mexico, and Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is where our second campus will be for MEA, is it's in New Mexico. So there you go.
Well, there we have it. There we have it. Next, I want to go to Betty. Betty, can you share a little bit about your startup and tell us a little bit about your journey?
Okay, well, I actually was inspired by a Wall Street Journal article to actually start stage 2 startups. So I actually have a corporate background, unlike Chip. And when I went to business school, everybody said, go work for a big company with great benefits and expense accounts. So I did that and basically decided that that wasn't enough. And few years back, I decided to try the PR business. So I quit and tried the PR business. And then I decided I liked being on the client side. So then I had to go back and join the non-PR business, the client side. And then I got tired of that and I quit again. And then one day I actually started a business helping international students to learn about life in the US called Intro America. But we hit some, if you will, some roadblocks with our president and the president of China going at each other. As a small company, I warn people not to get involved, as in doing any business that involves either one. So I sat down, I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and the Wall Street Journal said, well, you know, ahead of you in life is actually playing golf, playing tennis, helping your grandchildren out, or watching the stock market portfolio that you have. And I didn't like any of those options, even though they're all very good options. So I said, well, what are people doing in terms of their next phase in life? And basically decided that maybe the next phase in life is actually helping more people to become entrepreneurs. And because of that, we created Stage 2 Startups to actually help people who are interested in becoming entrepreneurs to become entrepreneurs. And we're helping people who are entrepreneurs to actually grow their businesses, either by helping them to raise money or to help them with their visibility in terms of marketing. And most recently, we decided to create our own, the very first Founders Over 40 Unconference, which we're actually running right now simultaneously live. And for 4 Wednesday lunchtimes on the East Coast, we're actually showing different ways that people can become their own business entrepreneurs, either from scratch by buying companies, doing social impact, becoming their own gig workers or consultants and coaches. So, and it's been a very checkered journey going back and forth. I can talk about working in corporate. I can talk about doing startups. I can talk about being in nonprofits. So it's a little bit of everything. No straight path here. Whoops, I can't hear you.
There we go. No straight path there. So already I'm picking up on a theme around this work not being very linear. That certainly sounds like the case for you, Betty, and for you, Chip. What about you, Jeff? Tell us a little bit about your startup and the journey that you've had. Has it also been very non-linear?
Well, you start to see patterns, which Chip knows a lot about. And so I may have not planned this journey in this linear way, but everything starts connecting after a certain point, after you've worked in the world long enough. And so our company is called Next for Me, and we inspire and supply tools for people who are going through transitions and change. And we're specifically focused on 45 plus people who are looking for new work, starting something new, trying to get their financial self in order for the next phase of their lives. And the great thing today is that Next for Me was and is an alumni of the StartOut Growth Lab. So we were in cohort 4, and a lot of our friends are here today in this summit. So it's great to see everybody. And our missions are very much aligned with StartOut in that they're empowering entrepreneurs, which they did for us. And we're trying to do the same for entrepreneurs, people going through transitions of work, et cetera. And so that's how we ended up here. Chip had a lot to do with the starting of our company, and right as he was departing Airbnb, and I said I had this idea, and he was like, go for it, and he supported us, and we kicked it off and have been running ever since, nearly 4 years now. So we're all our founders are seasoned entrepreneurs. A lot of us came from corporate world, WebMD, E-Trade, places like that. And, we sort of trust each other and know how to work together at this stage of the game, which is another benefit of being an older entrepreneur. You have this network of people that you trust and know to turn to. So, with respect to ageism and all of that, I don't know if it's about age or whatever, but I'm the worst employee, but I'm the best entrepreneur. I always had these great, how I could do things better in these corporate environments and all this stuff. And boy, when you start your own thing, you have to step up to the plate, because what you think you knew everything about, you don't. And so there's all of that still involved. And if you got an open mind and willing to try new things, it's a great life. So that's where we are.
Jeff, I just want to pick up on what you just shared. You just said that you're sort of the worst employee, but best entrepreneur. For the folks that are streaming in live right now, and the folks that will watch this asynchronously, can you go a little bit deeper and sort of describe, well, what does that look like? Because I think there are a number of people here that are managing teams, either as entrepreneurs, or folks that work in corporate, and maybe there's an opportunity for folks to deliver better coaching, recognizing that, sometimes, people are better entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs, than they are, task managers, or, model employees. And so can you share a little bit about, how that showed up for you in terms of being the worst employee, but the best entrepreneur?
Part of it was an independent streak to begin with. And then part of it, I always look back on my activist beginnings during the gay rights movement and AIDS and all of this stuff. And what we had to do was say, you're not going to keep me down. I'm worthy. And so in environments in the corporate world or elsewhere, when people are trying to keep you at bay in some way or another, my first reaction is to resist. And so, I hope I can do that same thing for the people that work for us and that are involved with our organization, to let them run, especially as you go through experiences in life. You have less of a tolerance for a lot of nonsense or time wasting things that don't get you where you're going. And so you might have to do a lot of those things yourself as an entrepreneur, but you're going to do them your way. And so at a certain point you have to start giving some of that stuff up, but there's really no substitute for being all in and all involved when you're doing your own thing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Betty, what were some of the challenges in creating a startup later in life? You mentioned that, you have the Founders Over 40 conference that you're involved with. I know Jeff had just mentioned that a lot of the work that he's doing is focused on sort of the 45 plus. I'm curious as to, what patterns or what insights you have to offer in terms of challenges in creating a startup later in life, particularly for LGBTQ folks, but also other, minority groups, for women, for folks of color. What have you observed? What have you learned?
Well, in our first session on day one on October 6th, we had 2 women tech founders. And the women tech founders found that they were challenged because they were not easily able to find tech partners. So they were creating tech companies without tech partners. And because they were women and because they were creating tech companies, they found that there was a lot of resistance to getting funding, right? And we all know that if you don't have a tech partner, if you don't have funding, it impedes, it doesn't stop, it slows down the process. But both of our women tech founders, Jean Pinder from Clear Health Costs and Tanya Van Court from GoSetter, were able to move ahead by finding actually angel investors who could help them. So I think actually part of being older means that you have a network that you can go to. And whether you're part of the LGBTQ community, whether you're a woman, whether you're a person of color, one of the things that you need to do is actually leverage your community relationships to get what you need done. And unfortunately, what we're finding is that if you fall out of, you know, this kind of classic young white male founder, especially if you're not a young white male tech founder, it's very difficult to get funding. And when you're older, you try to figure out more creative ways to get that funding. So I would say that that's probably one of the challenges for many people of a certain age. And I've actually found that even older white men have trouble outside of the tech community getting funding for their businesses. So I would say that one of the things that we need to do as stage 2 and as a society is to recognize that there are great entrepreneurs out there who are older, who are potentially people of color, who are women, who have great ideas. Like one of my friends, who's a tech founder in biotech, actually has a new, if you will, invention that actually is a spray that can stop bleeding. So that would revolutionize medicine. But he's having challenges raising money because he's a founder that's over 40. And so what I'm saying is basically that the community, the VC community, has to be much more open about the possibilities of what types of people are founding businesses and how they bring their, if you will, their resources to play is very important in terms of the founders that may be listening now, that they have more resources than they probably realize that they have. And they really have to work those resources because it's not going to be an easy road. I know in the last year, you know, I think there's been an awakening for people who are Black and brown to get more support. But, you know, I think that awakening has to be expanded to all people over the age of 40. Does that make sense to you?
It does, and it's very helpful. And I want to go to Chip, you know, to ask him, did you feel that you had a distinct advantage because of your work experience compared to younger founders?
Well, I think, I think one of the greatest opportunities of the 21st century, now that we have 5 generations in the workplace at the same time, is to match founders, match younger and older founders. In my case, I was not a founder of Airbnb, but I was a founder of a boutique hotel company and spent 25 years in the travel industry. So I had Airbnb 9 years ago when I joined was a little tech startup that was disrupting an industry, travel and hospitality, that they knew nothing about. And they were doing a great job of it, but they didn't understand the landscape, and they didn't understand a lot of things around leadership and entrepreneurship and strategy. And so what I would just say is there's a real opportunity for intergenerational collaboration, like we've never seen before. It's almost like a new generational compact where we can both solve in a for-profit or in a nonprofit or governmental way some of the most vexing problems in the world, by bringing to the table a variety of generations. And, there's a lot of brain science that actually bears this out. You put together a collection of young people on a team to solve a problem, they will solve it faster, but make more mistakes. You put together a team of just older people, it'll take longer, they'll make fewer mistakes. You combine an older and a younger team in this kind of experiment, and actually the likelihood of faster, better solutions is greater. So we know that diversity amongst teams makes a lot of sense. But when it comes to older and younger diversity on teams and including startup teams, there's brain science that says that diversity of the cognitive abilities that you have are to the benefit of the organization and the business. So yes, I'm a huge believer in the idea that it's not just about people over 40, in my opinion, starting their own things. That's great. And I love it. And we can talk more about that. But it is also about how do you reach across the bridge, and how do others who are younger reach across the bridge. And I think probably Adam Newman at WeWork and Travis Kalanick at Uber wish they had had a modern elder by their side. They still might have their job. Well, that was a really snide little bitchy joke. Excuse my language, but it's true. It's true. How many young founders flail badly because they don't have some wisdom and maturity right by their side?
You know, and also, ethics. I mean, I think, so much of the swirl that we see in the media every day, in terms of, companies sort of running the risk of being canceled or bare minimum being put on a timeout. A lot of it comes down to how do we govern our companies, and, what values are we governing our companies with when people are looking and when they aren't looking. Are there any lessons in terms of governing a startup that you might offer, Jeff? And Jeff, especially drawing on, I mean, part of what really stood out to me from what you shared earlier, when you had shared that you're the worst employee but the best entrepreneur, you talked about your independent streak, you talked about your activist beginnings, you talked about sort of understanding your worthiness, in the marketplace. Considering all of that, what observations you have to offer, or what advice would you give in terms of governing a startup?
Well, all of your experiences come into play. Anybody, no matter what age you are, you learn something from what you did before, and those accumulate over time. And so, as I said, we just don't waste a lot of time because we've seen a lot of time wasted in our careers. And so that's one advantage right away. We're just very succinct about what we're doing, and don't mess around. And everybody is also quite kind to each other. And that's another thing that comes out of experience. Look at any bridges that you burn. Tell you they're all going to come back to you. Okay. So it matters how you behave and what you've gotten from people along the way. So that helps us a lot. We have grown and we become more relevant because of partnerships that we've developed, and that also is a skill set that you bring in, and that's governing and managing your company. It is how do you connect with other people who have complementary missions as you and work together. So those are things that a young brusque kid out of college might not be great at yet. They're a warrior, this sort of thing, and that's when intergenerational collaboration comes along. It's like, get over here, man, let me tell you something. This is, you're going to regret this, and this might get in your way. What is your real goal here? Do you want to achieve this thing, or do you want to be right all the time? And so those are things that you catch along the way, and you can use and apply into your company or your job as the years go by.
I always like to say, do you want to be right or do you want to be heard?
That's right.
And feel free to use it, as needed. But I've found that it can really change the temperature in any conversation. Do you want to be right or do you want to be heard? Right. I see that we have a question in the chat. I want to sort of broaden it out a little bit. In the chat, I see Cowboy Rick. Hey, Cowboy Rick. Cowboy Rick asked, what are the most important things someone over 55 or 60 can do to get funding? I also want to broaden that question out to ask, what's a piece of advice that you would give to older founders that are just starting, right? And so, Betty, do you want to start us off on that?
Okay, so in terms of getting funding, be ready to write your own checks, because really a lot of us who are older, some of us do have the money, and that really makes a big difference to get things started. Actually, the other thing is to generate income. When you start generating income, all of a sudden everybody actually would like to fund you. And I know that when I was working, especially in Asia, the people I was talking to in terms of raising money always said, all right, well, how much money are you already generating? So if you can figure out how to generate income, and if you can put your own money into it, it makes a big difference. And so if I hope that that helps. So you're going to have to jump in and make that commitment. I forget, what was the second part of that question?
Well, just to follow up on what you just shared, Betty, so how much is too much? And so, I think you just offered some very practical advice in terms of being prepared to write your own check, and generating income, keeping in mind that, older entrepreneurs, I don't think we would advise that they tap into their retirement funds to invest in themselves, but, how much is too much in terms of writing, your own personal check to fund your startup?
Well, I think that really depends on what type of startup you're in. So if you're in a tech or a biotech startup, a life science startup, your check is going to be 6 or 7 figures. And if you're doing consulting, then it's not that much at all. It could be $10, right, to actually put together some old-fashioned business cards. So I think it really depends on your startup and what you want to do. And I just want to make a point of saying that I know StartOut really focuses on tech founders, and I think that's great, but there's a lot of people out there who are doing non-tech startups. And for them, there are different revenue models. And so you have to be aware that there are different revenue models and different requirements in terms of creating a business, starting a business, or even buying a business. So how much, I think it really depends how much you're willing to risk. And I think we all have maybe different risk tolerances. So if you have a high risk tolerance, then, I go for it. And even some people do tap into their retirement fund. Maybe not all of it, but maybe some of it. And you tell yourself, this is the number where I won't move from. And sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Now, let me just tell you, if I won the $100 million lottery, I'll take a big chunk of that and go fund a whole bunch of startups. So I really think that it depends on the startup, the founder, and their risk tolerance.
That's right. That's great. That's great. And just a little disclaimer here, right? You may want to consult your financial advisor before tapping into your retirement or your bank accounts to fund any of this. That is not the advice of AARP, right?
Right. AARP might not consider that a very valuable
That's right. That's
idea.
Right.
But we just had the Goldman Sachs people, and the Goldman Sachs people have this 10,000 small businesses program, and they're willing to help people create their network so that they can actually go and potentially raise more money. So there are different ways that you can expand your network so that you can raise more money, right? Which is the point. How do you do it? And I think you have to actually tap into as many organizations as is possible to even have. Yeah. So I would say that, probably there are organizations within the LGBTQ community that maybe fund startups within the community. I know, ironically, there's something called an Asian Women's Circle that also funds startups by Asian women. So I think we just need to be much more aware. So we have to do our homework.
That's right. That's right. And while we're giving plugs to LGBTQ organizations, folks should be familiar with the National LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. Oftentimes there are grant opportunities that they promote. Also, you might want to consider getting your certification as an LGBTQ business enterprise. They facilitate that process. And so you can go to nglcc.org to check that out. But I want to go to Chip. What piece of advice would you give to older founders that are just starting out?
Well, let's start with some statistics. The Kauffman Foundation really blazed the trail here, but Harvard, Northwestern, other schools have shown the same. The likelihood of success for entrepreneurs over 50 is significantly greater than it is for entrepreneurs in their 20s and 30s. Now, some of that is because the businesses that someone in their 50s start often are less risky than the ones that at 20 or 30, someone in their 20s or 30s starts. But I start with that as some kind of confidence builder, that the fact is that the likelihood of success grows with age. Now, this is totally at odds with the societal narrative on this. But why is that? So it's partly because you're, again, back to the brain again, you get better as you get older around connecting the dots, what's called crystallized intelligence. It's a form of wisdom. It's a form of being able to think systemically and holistically. This is one of the reasons, as has been said by both Jeff and Betty, your network is your network is your net worth. The network you've built over time, it works to your value, not just in raising money, but also in finding clients and in word of mouth and finding employees. So often the best employee you're going to find is not someone you know, it's someone who in your network knows someone else who's well suited for you. So use that network. A good friend of ours, Jeff and mine, totally spacing on her name. That's another thing that happens with the brain as it ages.
Karen Wickery.
Karen Wickery. Ken Wickery's great book on networking is well suited to older entrepreneurs. I mean, it really speaks to how do you use your network as a calling card for a career, not just for entrepreneurs, but for anybody. Beyond that, I would just say one of the things I would recommend to older entrepreneurs is look at building a team that is diverse, not just age diverse, but diverse on all levels. And that's been something that's been really important to me along the way, because it's really easy in the early days of a new company to have groupthink. And groupthink can actually sometimes burst you through some icebergs, but it doesn't see the icebergs in the first place. Because quite frankly, if everybody's focused like this and we all think alike, we actually lose the ability to rise above that and see the blind spots. And so I would just say, again, looking at diversity of all kinds on your leadership team is pretty essential.
Just as a follow-up, Chip, and if you could drop the link or at least the name of that networking book in the chat so that folks can pick that up, that would be helpful. And then
let's see if Jeff can do that while I'm talking. Thank you, Jeff, if you can. Thank you.
Sure. And then how do you navigate the different networking events? One question is that folks have is age a leverage or a blocker? And sometimes when it comes to networking among older adults, sometimes they may be self-conscious about their age or just sort of that dynamic in terms of talking to a younger founder or investor. And so any tips that you can offer in terms of networking for older adults?
Well, here's what I would just say. It's sort of a broader answer, and it's something I talk about in my book, Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder. And that is learn to become a mentor and an intern at the same time. So a modern elder, as I was called at Airbnb, is someone, and this is what they said to me, the three founders, modern elder is someone who's as curious as they are wise. So just because we're older doesn't mean we're not curious, doesn't mean we're not beginner's mind, doesn't mean we're not constantly learning. And so I would just say, whether it's at a networking event or it's an opportunity to maybe build a mutual mentorship relationship with someone who's a generation or two younger than you, know that the most important thing is to show up with curiosity and a passionate engagement. Because when you show up with a curiosity and a passionate engagement at a networking event, people don't notice your wrinkles, they notice your energy. And when they notice your energy, what they notice is like, I want to lean in and learn a little bit more from this person, or go and maybe collaborate with them in some way. So I would just say curiosity is the elixir of life. And it is absolutely an important fuel for any successful entrepreneur at any age. But I think even more so at an older age, because it's a surprise. when you're curious in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s as an entrepreneur, people are a little surprised because they think that you're going to be set in your ways. And so you've actually broken through a myth or a stereotype. And when people see someone breaking through a myth or a stereotype, as you probably know, as all of us know in our own ways, sometimes people actually are more curious to learn more about you.
Yeah. I want to give each of you an opportunity to quickly, offer a final thought before we begin to wind down the session. I really love what you said about curiosity being the elixir of life and how people don't notice your wrinkles, they notice your energy. Really love that. Jeff, do you want to start us off with a final thought?
Yeah, we're talking about ageism somewhat here, and that bias is not going to go away. It's very embedded in our culture historically, and as we've seen with other folks, it takes a long time to come out of that and come through these things and find new ways. So, you can't change the world necessarily, but what you can do is be provocative. You can be talking about things in new ways that are going to get people's attention. And following up on a couple other points, I don't think necessarily that chasing money is what a new company should be doing. A new company should be defining what it is you do, and that's going to evolve over time, and also find a way to make money. And once you've got those two things nailed, your product market fit and a revenue stream, then you should go out and start talking to people about money. Now, that's not to say you can't form relationships along the way and that sort of thing, but I dismiss this idea that all new companies should be looking for VC funding. There's a lot of work before that happens to have a solid company and not give away the ranch, basically.
That's great. Thank you for that,
So,
Betty.
Okay. So I would say, like Chip said, if you have curiosity, I think the thing to do is to try new things. And so the older you get, the less people think you're willing to try new things. And so what you really should do, like Jeff says, is to do something that's not expected. And it really will make you stand out. So when we decided to do this online conference over a whole month, it was not something that people usually do. And then we said, oh, we're going to get speakers from all over the country, and we're going to get people of color, and we're going to have more women than men. And it's all trying new things. And I think that if there's people listening who want to do something new, they have to realize that they have to push themselves to try new things. Because I have to say, the older you are, maybe the more resistant you can be to like, hey, I don't want to try something new. But that's when you really have to try something new. So I would say, thank you for giving us the opportunity. And, all of you listening, make sure you try something new today.
That's right. That's right. Chip,
so good. So good. I want to get Betty down to Modern Elder Academy.
I'm coming. I'm coming.
Are you? Okay, great. You could be a teacher. Well, I would just say one of the things I've learned at the Modern Elder Academy, we now have 1,750 alumni from 28 countries who've been in our program. It's really about shifting from a fixed to a growth mindset. So when you have a fixed mindset, you have a tendency to focus on proving yourself, and you define success as winning. When you have a growth mindset, you focus on improving yourself.
Yeah.
And success is not defined by winning, it's defined by learning. And I think if we can all shift to that, from that fixed to that growth mindset, that is really what we teach at MEA, not just in Baja, but also with our MEA online program. And the average age of the people who come to it's 54, but we've had people as young as 30 and as old as 88. So that's what I would recommend.
That's great. Thank you for that, Chip. And Josh in the chat is asking what academy. So if you could put the name of the academy in the chat, that would be great. And then also, what was the name of the book, that networking book that you mentioned earlier?
I think Jeff was going to put that in.
It's Taking the Work Out of Networking.
Taking the Work Out of Networking.
by Karen Wickley.
A big hand to our panel. Thank you, Jeff and Chip and Betty. You all were fantastic. We are so thankful for your generosity of spirit and insights and information. Want everybody to know that we're heading into a break right now. And so the next session will resume at 2:30. I'm Nii-Quartelai from AARP. We are a proud sponsor of this session. And for more information on some of the work that we're doing at AARP, you can go to aarp.org/pride. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent job.
Thank you. Take care. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.